Welcome, welcome. Jamie Hernandez here, founder of Breakthrough Yoga Coaching Method, helping you bridge the gap between your spiritual practice and your business. Today's training is called the 5 Keys of Manifesting Your Dream Life and Your Business. Now, I'm not claiming that I am some manifestation expert. I think in many ways, all of us are natural manifestors, especially if you're in this group. But what I do know is if we are going to create a life that we love, a life that we dream of, a life that we envision, manifestation is part of the whole process. And what I want you to think about is that there are some things in your life that you have naturally manifested. It's like, for example, right now I'm in a backyard, my backyard with a house with 2 floors and a driveway. Okay, so my husband and I, we manifested this house because it was sort of this thing that we've been thinking upon, planning upon, taking action upon for a long time. So I want you to think in your life, what are the things in your life today that you've naturally manifested? Like if you look back in your timeline and you look back like 10 years from now, I'm sure, especially if you're a coach or if you're a healer, it's like there's so many clients you work with, there's so many experiences that you've experienced, given retreats, all of these things, and it has been almost a natural progression because you continue to kind of move towards what you were curious about, what lit you up, what was exciting, what is the things that you wanted to break through and heal. So let me know in the comments if there's something in your life that you've already naturally manifested. So look around, and don't look around in the future, obviously, but look, where you were 10 years ago and where you are today. There are many things that you've manifested in your life. Now, there are certain things that are a little bit more, we want them, but we don't necessarily create an intentional environment. Like, so for example, house, garage, driveway, backyard, because that's almost like a collective thing in some way. It's not like this out of the box thing that we're thinking about, and maybe for some it is, but for us it's like, okay, yeah, that's what we're gonna do, right? And even when we were like young, since we were 18, we kind of understood the understanding of compounding interest and all of this stuff. So it was sort of something natural. But there are certain things in your life that you manifest and you're being called, and those are the manifestations I'm talking about. You're being called for a greater purpose. Perhaps you need some tools like money and resources like coaches and mentors and things to make something that you've always known to be true happen. And those kind of things, they in some way naturally happen, but in other ways we have to be intentional. So the thing I want to ask you right now is, what timeline are you on right now? Because I think when we're younger, it's natural to envision our life, and because we don't have a lot of pressure, right? Like when you're a kid and you imagine yourself dancing, or you imagine yourself in a house, or you imagine yourself, having babies, like those things are actually intuitive hits, and there's no pressure of like making it happen. You're just like, oh yeah, one day that would be so cool if I, would be dancing in front of a stage of people, or speaking to people, or, there's these things that you envision in your intuition. And I've talked about this a lot, things that you've always known. And then as you move towards where you're moving, and then you start getting an even more clearer picture, and you become an adult, so many things start to happen in your psyche and in your subconscious, and the pressure of surviving, the pressure of providing for yourself, and if you have a family or if you have a business, that starts to kind of affect what you expect and affect the pressure we may put on ourselves unconsciously, emotionally, and actually actual pressure to make something happen. So then it starts to shift and change. So then we have to create an environment that supports our manifestation goals and dreams. We have to create some kind of what I think is a lifestyle. If you look at anyone successful right? And it does, success is on your terms, okay? I'm not talking about only financial success. I'm talking about somebody who really is living their life the way they truly envision it. They are very intentional about their timelines, okay? So I want to start to ask you some questions. What timeline are you on? So for example, if I think about one of my greatest mentors, she was on a timeline that she realized she was going to go crazy, and she was sort of like in completely on the wrong timeline, living in the city, and now, like 10 years later, I think it's even longer, that she's like now in South America on a beach with a huge land and like a community and surfs every day. Like that's a completely different timeline, you see? And so those kind of timelines, we have to start to see like what timeline are you on? Meaning to say, there is somewhere you're going. Okay, you all know you're going somewhere. But do you consciously know and see and envision where that is? Right? And I talk about this a lot, but it's like if we're going to see that, we're going to have to learn how to somatically, let the nervous system receive. We're going to have to learn how to clear the mind, is what we do in our program. And we're going to have to energetically know how to master our energy. So from that place, when we get these hits of intuition, these hits of downloads, these hits of like knowing and seeing yourself, but now it's with all of this other construct, this ego construct of, in the collective, right, having a house and a home and all that stuff here is not totally out of the box, but moving down south or moving to Hawaii to go surfing, and that's like you revolve your whole life around that. That's a different timeline that you know to be true, but your surroundings don't necessarily support it. So that's why I'm saying some manifestations require some kind of structure, some kind of container, and a lifestyle. Okay, so the first question is, what timeline are you on? And in order to see what timeline you're on, you have to have some sort of practice of being able to listen. I talk about this a lot in many of my other trainings, so I'm not going to go into it too much, right? And then in that timeline, you want to start to see like, well, in that timeline, who am I becoming? Because you are a coach, you are a healer, and I know you envision yourself, and you're always envisioning the evolution of yourself, because that's who we are as human beings. We don't stay a 5-year-old or a 14-year-old, a 30-year-old. Every transformation is an evolution of who we are, a different version of who we are, right? So that part is natural. But as we kind of go into our own vision that may not match our external reality, we have to really start to tune in and learn how to trust what that vision is saying. So who are you becoming in that vision? Okay, so who's that identity? What is that new version? And again, it's something we've been doing for our whole life, right? When you were 30, when you were 40, when you were 50, when you were 60, there is always a new version of yourself. So we want to maybe take off the pressure of like, oh, this new version, like sometimes we get a little caught up, especially like with social media and all this stuff, like the new identity. But it's a very natural thing. Like there's a new identity. And if we can really listen to that and see who that is, then we can learn how to take actions from that new version of ourselves. Right? So it's like the 5-year-old who always wanted to be a ballet dancer. She's going to beg mommy and daddy to bring her to ballet lessons every day, right? Because she sees herself in that new identity, that new version. Do you see? Right? So same with us, but now we don't have mommy and daddy. Same with us. We are becoming, right? And who are you becoming? Okay, and again, comes from deep meditation, that comes from flashes of intuition. I talk about that a lot in many other trainings, so scroll down and you'll see. But where do you see yourself going? Okay, and this happens so much where it's like we have these visions of, so many of my clients see themselves speaking to many different people, right? And touching many different people and transforming the lives of many different people. And so we want to start to like continue to see that, because now for some reason as we're an adult, when we have these visions of ourselves, like the ballerina who she buys a tutu and she does everything, and she like begs her mom for the ballet slippers and she does it all, right? We somehow we hold back on that thing that's like, because we almost see it as a dream, and then our subconscious gets so used to doing what's comfortable or what's safe that we don't necessarily listen to who we're becoming. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. So we want to start to see, who are we becoming? So ask yourself that question. And these are going to be all contemplative questions that will hopefully come to you, right? And I think right? Deep down, if you really were to continue to observe your own intuition, you kind of know who you're becoming. Right? And so it's the courage of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm becoming a leader in my space. I'm becoming a healer of these people. I am, becoming somebody who offers this type of service. I'm becoming a person who has this body, this type of family, this type of relationship, this type of lifestyle, this type of schedule, right? Who makes certain decisions, right? And the other question is, how active are you about staying in this present moment? How active, when you start to understand what timeline you're on, and do you want to shift that timeline, right? Because sometimes we are on a timeline and we're like, I'm like, in the next 10 years, if I keep on doing what I'm doing exactly the way I'm doing it today, is that the timeline I want to stay on? If it is, great, stay on it. But if it isn't, and most likely for most people, it's like a tweak where there's a lot of things going on that's great, but there's there's something else that is like pulling you, especially if you're a coach or a healer. There's something that is compelling your soul, right? So are you actively in this present moment, right, supporting that timeline and who you're becoming, right? And that comes from our own internal work. That comes from the environment that we surround ourselves in. So, where do you place yourself? If you, for example, are this, I'll just use an example, but it's like if you are, I don't know, right? Like if you are somebody who's a health coach and you're hanging around people who are eating junk food and watching TV all day, right? it's gonna be really hard to thrive in that environment. Okay? So that's just, a silly example, or an obvious example. So now we can start to discern, because we get just so used to the timeline that we're on, used to what we're doing in the everyday Monday, just getting our stuff done, dinner, all this stuff, right? But it's like, how active are you placing yourself in an environment that supports the timeline that you want to be on? Who are the people that you're surrounding yourself with? What are the things even around you? How are you even dressing, right, to be on that timeline? Like, because our environment, right, is much stronger than our willpower. So we might as well make it easy for ourselves. Like the little girl who wants to become a princess, what does her room look like? It's a friggin' like palace, right? My daughter fills her room with all of these like stuffies, and it's so colorful in there, and it's like this rainbow, like magical place, because that's who she knows who she is. She's like this magical rainbow being, and so same with you. It's like, how do you surround yourself with? And for me, like I utilize alter medicine, where it's taking objects from the 5 elements and intentionally utilizing and what I would call prayer to help me remind me of who I'm becoming and where I'm going and what timeline I'm moving along, right? And you know, asking not just help from my own intellect or from Google, but it's like asking, the greater life, whatever that is, that we consider that is, but something bigger than us, right? Because it's always been something bigger than us. It's always been something bigger than us. And so if we don't take the time to tune into that part of us that is connected to all things and is in this place of knowing and is this trust in life, then we're just going to kind of do our thing. We're going to stay in survival mode and just do our thing, which is important, because that's the first layer of being, is like being able to take care of your own needs. But if we don't leave room, right, to step into that place where there's a higher state of consciousness, where there is a place where you can feel attuned to life and all that is, attuned to maybe your own guides and spirits, attuned to a frequency of knowing and trust in life, it's going to be very hard to or pretty much impossible, right, to kind of stay on a timeline that you envision, And let me know in the comments if that makes sense. Right? So and the thing is, and why I call this a lifestyle, it's like you have to surround yourself physically, mentally, energetically with the people, with the things, with spirits, in order to manifest what you want. And so it becomes a intentional choice, moment by moment. Little girls who stay in their room and are princesses all day long, they're doing it for fun, they're doing it for play, and so we can tune back into that energy of innocence, of play, of supporting herself in that fun way of oftentimes I'll dress a certain way because it gives space for the creative force to land here on earth, because that creative force is everywhere. That creative force is constantly streaming through us, and if we don't reinforce that creative force, right, then it's very hard for our mind to actually see anything manifest in the 3D, if that makes sense. Yeah, let me know if that makes sense. Okay, so I don't want to turn this thing off. Okay, now I think the biggest thing that we have to start to understand, and I talked about this at the beginning, is we are constantly stepping into new identities. And so one way of practically going about this for you is, if you're starting to see what timeline you're moving along, and you kind of want to shift, and who you're becoming, that who you're becoming needs to make decisions today. So when we're manifesting something, we're living it, we're being it, we're breathing it now, right? And again, I want you to think about something like, a lot of us go on these dream retreats that we've always wanted to study with our most beloved guru, our teacher, or whatever you call them, right? And we naturally, hey Allison, we've naturally manifested that, and we're that identity, right? That identity that we are choosing, like, okay, I'm a person who goes on these retreats, who interacts with these soul beings, who is in an environment where we do certain things that maybe not everyone I know does, but it's like, so we start to decide based on the new identity, right? And so again, sometimes when we're trying to do something, we want to see, well, how did I kind of already do that? Right? So if I've manifested a trip to Bali and to study with my most adored teacher or this retreat that I've always been wanting to go on, there is something that you've done there, right? One, you made the decision. Two, the new identity or that identity who is the one that goes on retreats made the decisions, right? So the new identity of the version that you're becoming, and we're always creating new identities, is deciding. So then you start to decide, okay, yeah, what am I going to wear? Oh yeah, like, okay, what airline am I going to take? Oh, okay, how much am I willing to pay for the tickets? Oh, okay, how am I going to greet that teacher when I'm there? Oh, okay, like how am I going to interact with the people when I'm there? What am I going to do when I'm in Bali? Do you see how naturally you've done this before? So if you're trying to manifest something that is not necessarily coming into fruition or you're not feeling it, it's because you're not making decisions based on what the identity of that version of yourself would make. You see? So timelines are really interesting because you can kind of shift, and here's the interesting thing about timelines. It's like they're very shifty, okay? Depending on the vibration you're holding. 1 week, they sort of like, I see this all the time with my husband. We can like totally be getting along and, doing all kinds of stuff that I have intentionally focused my own timeline, and then it shifts everything else and everyone in it. And then let's say, for example, we kind of get out of the manifestation lifestyle and we just sort of like do our thing and we just wake up and we're just cranky and doing, and then just like kind of surviving. You will see, and I want you to notice this in your life, you will see everybody and everything in that timeline shifts. And I see this often with my clients, right? So all of you are coaches and healers. So, when I'm sort of in that practice, my manifestation lifestyle, everybody in the timeline, especially with my clients who are like, dealing with a lot of different, emotional issues, are who isn't, okay? So but it's interesting that they're going to be on a slightly different frequency. But when I'm sort of off in my own frequency, I notice all my other clients are also off. I mean, it's an obvious, I want you to kind of observe this because you guys are coaches and healers, right? And therapists and in the therapeutic realm, but it's like, I want you to notice that, okay? I want you to notice how all of your clients are kind of have a little bit more resistance, or a little bit more in their patterns, or a little bit more in the kind of shadow of things, right? And it's like, whew. And then when I shift myself, it shifts and everything else shifts around it. So that's why it's important to continuously build a manifestation lifestyle, because we're constantly jumping timelines in milliseconds.